Hello, everybody, and welcome to the European Tribunal in Defense of Aquatic Ecosystems. This is the hearing for the first case, the Mer de Glace case, that is happening today, January 30th, on a virtual scenario since we have not been able to meet in person. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. This has been an enormous work and a lot of many meetings to get here to this event. And I'm really grateful for everybody who's here on the conversation today on Zoom, who is following us on Facebook. This is going to be a really amazing event, a really great tribunal hearing. And I just want to start this tribunal by addressing some logistics and telling you a little bit about why are we here. Rights of nature is the new approach to environmental law, which views nature not as a series of resources that human beings can use, but as a living subject with its own interests and rights. To make the rights of nature an inextricable part of our legal system and society, demonstrating how courts and judges should treat environmental cases through we have created the Rights of Nature Tribunals. We aim for the interests of non-human beings to be equal in importance to the human interest. That as a society, we need to understand that there needs to be a fundamental paradigm shift in how we relate to nature. As the Rights of Nature International Tribunal, we have organized many tribunals so far. We started in 2014 with the Quito Tribunal. We followed with the second International Tribunal in Lima in 2014. We then followed with an International Tribunal in 2015 in Paris, followed by International Tribunal in 2017 in Bonn. The latest international tribunal we did was in Chile, a regional tribunal, and now the European Tribunal happening in 2021. This has been an amazing way to give a voice to nature and to understand that we need to treat nature as a subject of rights and that we need to change our cosmovision and the way we treat nature. And that is why international tribunals give nature a voice. Our jurisprudence is based on the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth. This Universal Declaration was written by more than 33,000 people joined together in Tiquipaya, Cochabamba, Bolivia back in 2010. And we have made this our jurisprudence for the international tribunals. It is of my pleasure to let you know that we will have a hearing of about 3 hours. You can all follow the agenda in the event. It will be a really important tribunal, and it's going to be headed by an amazing group of judges. And I'm going to go ahead and present them all. Cormac Cullinan, he's going to be the president of our tribunal. He's the director of the Wild Law Institute, as well as the Cullinan Associates, a leading environmental law firm in Cape Town. He has drafted environmental laws, policies, and strategies, and advised on institutional reforms in more than 20 countries. Cormac's groundbreaking book, Wild Law, a manifesto for Earth Justice, developed the Earth jurisprudence approach and helped inspire a growing global rights of nature movement. Cormac led the drafting of the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth that we use as our jurisprudence for the tribunals, and was one of the founders of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. Welcome, Cormac. We have Valerie Cabanes. Valerie is our judge for this case, for the Mer de Glace case. Valerie Cabanes is a legal expert in international law, specializing in human rights. She is the legal advisor for Stop Ecocide Foundation, and she is a member of the Executive Committee of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature since 2015, and one of the experts of the UN Harmony with Nature Initiative Network since 2016. She launched in 2013 a European citizen initiative on the crime of ecocide and contributed to the drafting of a proposal for amendments to the Statute of the International Criminal Court on the crime of ecocide. She is the author of Homo Natura, En harmonie avec les vivants, un nouveau droit pour la terre, pour en finir avec l'écocide, and Rights for the Planet Earth. Thank you, Valerie, for being with us. We have Lisa Mead as our judge as well. Lisa Mead is a lawyer, educator, and advocate for Earth rights. She runs the Earth Law Alliance and is a founding committee member of the Ecological Law and Governance Association. In 2018, she acted as lead counsel for nature rights at the Permanent People Tribunal on Human Rights, Fracking, and Climate Change. Lisa was an expert contributor to the UN 2016 Nature Dialogue on Earth Jurisprudence and has been an advocate for ocean rights in the International Rights of Nature Tribunal in Paris. Lisa has taught applied sustainability in Findhorn's College, and she for 3 years facilitating the economic design module for Findhorn's College Eco-Village Design Educational Program. Thank you, Lisa, for being with us. Finally, we have Richard Falk. Richard Falk is a professor emeritus of international law at the Princeton University, where he was a member of the faculty for 40 years. He currently is a professor of global law, Queen Mary University in London. He is the author of On Nuclear Weapons, Denuclearization, Demilitarization, and Disarmaments, published in 2019. Falk has been nominated annually for the Nobel Peace Prize since 2009. He's a senior vice president of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, and between 2008 and 2014, served as a UN Special Reporter for Occupied Palestine. Richard Falk drafted an Ecocide Convention in 1973, explicitly recognizing at the outset that man has consciously and unconsciously inflicted irreparable damage on the environment in times of war and peace. Thank you, Richard, an honor to have you here. And Tom, finally, Tom Goldtooth is our judge. He is the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network. He's also a member of the Executive Committee of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and has been involved with environmental-led issues and programs working with tribal governments in developing indigenous-based environmental protections and infrastructure. He's an amazing Indigenous leader, and we are really grateful to have you here with us, Tom. I want to briefly introduce also our case presenters and our prosecutor. I'm going to start with the case presenters very quickly. Marine Izquierdo is a lawyer and coordinator in Notre, Tous, committed to climate justice and recognition of the rights of non-human entities. Jean-Baptiste Bosson, a glaciologist and geomorphologist, author of the first study of World Humanity Heritage Glaciers. Fiona Mill from Mountain Wilderness France, an advisor in the industrial and territorial ecosystem regeneration administration at Mountain Wilderness France since 2018. Jan Bornet. Jan is a 29-year-old mountain guide and founding member of the Alpines Line, a collective which aims to bring a chance of mountaineering and general mountain outdoor activities. He's also doing a geography PhD on the adaptation of mountain sports to climate change. And our legal advisors for this case is Pierre Spiroy, a PhD student in international environment law at the Centre Universitaire Jonas d'études juridiques in Rouen, and also a PhD student in eco-anthropology and ethnobiology at the French National Museum of Natural History. It is a great pleasure to have you all here. And I also want to introduce our prosecutor. Let me just open. It's here. Rebecka Lemoine is our prosecutor for the Earth. It is of great pleasure that we have you here, Rebecka, with us. She is a member of the Green Party and a spokesperson for biodiversity. She has been awarded the Environmental Hero by the WWF and the King of Sweden for taking the initiative to celebrate the UN Biodiversity Day in Sweden. With a master's degree in conservation biology and background as a biology consultant, her biggest concern is to find political solutions to tackle the mass extinction of our fellow species. Therefore, she is working to change our basic values where animals and nature also have legal rights. With that, I can tell you that we have an amazing panel for today of judges, of presenters, and a really beautiful and amazing Earth prosecutor. So I'm really grateful for all of you to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to listen to you all. And do remember that we have, I am doing the role of co-secretariats, and that role I'm sharing with two amazing people, with Camille Bouko-levy. She's also our co-secretariat, and Camille is a committed journalist of the themes of social ecology and indigenous people. She's studying political science in France, where she's currently doing the Master Rigs Science, Environmental and Health degree. Camille is a hard activist for implementing the rights of nature since she realized she did an internship at GARN. She is committed at all skills, international GARN member, national working for wild law, and at a local state as an activist in her city, Toulouse. And also with us, finally, is Olivia. Let me just open your Olivia Gervais is our co-secretariat as well. And thank you so much for this amazing work that has happened this whole year to be doing this tribunal. After an exciting internship at GARN, Olivia has committed herself to be part of the Secretariat of the Marseille Tribunal. She is studying human and social sciences and is following the master's degree, Future Generations and Legal Transitions. The various encounters she has had for the last years through various organizations have made her think. She militates for the left-wing ecology and takes into account the Capitolocene, which makes the end of the month and the end of the world the same fight. She also fights for biocentric ecology and therefore for the rights of nature and its defenders. With that, you can see that we have an amazing panel, and I want to officially open up the tribunal and give the word to Tom Goldtooth, who will be starting us with a water ceremony. Tom, the floor is with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like for everyone that has brought their water to this tribunal to hold that container of water. For those of you that were not able to put that container of water together, I'd like to ask that you put your thinking, your mind into some of our teachings to help you meditate as we open this event with recognizing the water. So this is the ceremony that recognizes the purpose and the importance of the water of life. I'm going to share this with you now. I'm going to just introduce myself very briefly in my Diné Navajo language and the Dakota Sioux language. How ya the Bethleshini Nashle, Wodakota Bashishichi, how Bidakiapi, Ampetu de Chante Westeya, Iyuha, Na Pechi Yuzapedo, Dakota Chaze Makupi, Matko Wayakapi, Hemakiapido, Dene Ha, De Wakanta one Dakota Hunkamiye. Any water is life. Water is sacred. Water is life. Water is the beginning of life and must be respected. We are cradled by water before we are born. Water gives life to all our foods and waters, the springs. The ice melts the highest mountains and the ice on the top of the world, the polar regions, the rivers, the oceans, and the water in the deep aquifers of our Mother Earth, and the water cycles between the clouds and the earth and nature and in our bodies. We are all related to water. We must understand and protect our relationship to the oceans, the sacred relationship of the mountains to the oceans and the oceans to the mountains. The ocean is the sacred map of the world and connects us all. Water from our indigenous cosmology is a natural element of the universe. Water has its own life force, its own consciousness. Water has a spirit with its voice and songs. If you can hear the container of water before you, you are learning the duties and responsibilities we must have to preserve, protect, and fulfill our sacred duties to live with respect, peace, and love in this wonderful creation of life of Mother Earth. Ha Mitakiowase, all my relations. I am Matko Awayakati, Tom Goldtooth. Thank you. And I'd like to ask that you put this water aside now on your desk. someplace and have this water be a witness to this tribunal. And when we're all done, take that water that you have collected, take it outside by the base of a tree, return this water to the land with your blessings, your prayers, your meditation on however your connection is with the sacredness of Mother Earth and Father Sky. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for bringing the main actor of this tribunal to the hearing, water. Thank you so much for that opening prayer and ceremony. With that, all the excitement in my heart, I give the word to the president of the tribunal, Cormac Cullinan.
Thank you, Nati. Good evening, everybody. It is my very great honor and pleasure as the president of the European Tribunal in Defense of Aquatic Ecosystems to declare these proceedings open. Seeing as we are not in court, I'll have to do my best. In a few minutes, I will hand the floor to my colleague, Judge Valerie Cabanes, who is the lead judge for today's hearings. But before I do so, I would like to speak a little about the significance of what we are involved with here today. More than 10 years ago, after the failure of the 2009 climate change talks in Copenhagen, President Evo Morales of Bolivia decided to give the peoples of the world an opportunity to solve the problems which their governments have been unable to do. He convened a People's World Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth in April 2010. Now, I remember flying from the capital of Bolivia, La Paz, down along the Andes mountain range to the small town of Cochabamba, where the conference was being held. Out of the window of the plane, we could see the top of the Andes and the retreating glaciers and snows on top of the mountains. And these glaciers are essential sources of water for the people in the very dry lowlands. I also remember the heartfelt plea of a man who stood up to speak during the working group that was working on drafting the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. He was a peasant farmer who had traveled a great distance from a small farm to participate in the proceedings. And he told us that he felt he could not return to his home without having spoken, given us his message, which he had brought to the conference. And his message was very simple. He simply said, "Our llamas are dying. There is not enough water. Please help us." And he, like so many people around the world who've survived in harsh climates for many centuries, cannot simply adapt to climate change that threatens their ways of life, nor can they prevent the global changes that threaten them, at least not alone. And that is why events like the tribunal are so important, because we are playing our role in addressing these issues. Now, as Natalia has explained to you, many thousands of people attended the Cochabamba conference, which adopted the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth that will be central to the proceedings before this tribunal. Now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we are all familiar with, was adopted in response to the horrors of the Second World War in order to articulate those fundamental rights which the international community believe are the birthright of every human being. For this reason, those rights, those human rights, are described as inherent and inalienable. In other words, every human being has those rights simply because they exist as a human being, and no government or court can take them away. Now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not a legally binding document, but has been incredibly influential in establishing international norms that protect people and inspiring the adoption of legally binding treaties and laws. However, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is concerned about the rights of one animal out of many species, the humans. The Universal Declaration of the Rights on Mother Earth, on the other hand, provides the context for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because it recognizes that all beings, by that I mean all that has come into being or that exists, have rights too. They also have rights because they exist as part of the Earth community. Importantly, it also emphasizes that because all beings are an integral part of Mother Earth, any conflict between these rights must be resolved in a way that maintains the integrity, balance, and health of Mother Earth. In other words, we must place Mother Earth first. The Declaration also defines the duties of humans to other beings, and in the hearing today, that will be a central part of the discussion. What are our duties in relation to glaciers? I would simply like to emphasize that what we are engaged with here is something very important, I believe. First of all, the tribunal is a people's tribunal. It has been established by people like all of us here today, who are deeply concerned about the issues facing humanity in the 21st century, and who are determined to do something about it, even if their governments are not. Secondly, what the tribunal is in many ways a prototype of the kind of institution that ecologically sustainable societies will need. In other words, we are experimenting with a new form of court, a new form of organization, which, unlike existing ones, is capable of taking a holistic view of the situation and taking into account the interests of all the members of the Earth community. And also of particular importance is the fact that these hearings of the European Tribunal are specifically in defense of aquatic ecosystems. As Tom has explained to you, water is absolutely central to the Earth community. In many ways, it is life. And like life, it flows through the system and binds us all together. And the European Tribunal is particularly important because it is focusing on the importance of the whole hydrological cycle. And so there will be a series of hearings today, starting with the glaciers. In February, case in French Guiana concerning river pollution and illegal gold panning. And then in March, Lake Fatten in Sweden, dealing with water contamination. In April, the hydrological dams in the Balkans. And in May, the question of ecocide and red mud in Marseille. So we are addressing one of the most central issues facing humanity, and not just humanity, but the Earth community as a whole, through this series of hearings. And through the evidence that we will hear today and the conclusions that the judges will make, we will be trying to chart a way into the future, a wiser way that recognizes the interests of all involved and not just humans. And at this point, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Judge Valerie Cabanes. Thank you.
Cormac, before we go to Valerie Cabanes, I will love if we can hear Philippe Descola. We are really grateful and honored that Philippe has accepted our invitation to give us some inspirational talk about our relationship with nature. So I want to, before we formally start the tribunal, want to give the floor to Philippe Descola, and thank you so much for being here and giving us some inspirational talk.
Thank you.
Greetings to everyone listening and watching, wherever you may be. Buenos días a todos. Bonjour à tous. Let me begin by thanking the organizers of this session of the tribunal for inviting me to say a few opening remarks before the case of the Mer de Glace is formally opened. I am neither a legal scholar nor a glaciologist or an ecologist specializing in aquatic ecosystems. I am an anthropologist with almost 50 years of experience sharing the life of native peoples in the upper Amazon, in particular the Achua in Ecuador. And it is thanks to them that I understood that what we call nature is in reality an abstraction. Let me explain this. Like other Amazonian natives, the Achuar, which has had the effect of profoundly transforming the forest. To open a garden, they clear a plot in the forest, burn the vegetal debris, and plant around 60 different species of cultivated plants in the ash litter. But they also transplant in their gardens an almost equal number of forest species, usually fruit trees and palm trees. After 3 or 4 years of using a garden, its yield diminishes, and the Achuar abandon it to open another one further away. The forest then colonizes the plot, and the cultivated plants disappear. But the transplanted forest species remain at a higher density than would be found, so to speak, naturally. Most native dwellers of the Amazonian rainforest proceed in the same manner. And if we envision this process taking place since the beginning of the domestication of plants in the Amazon about 10,000 years ago, it means that the structure of the forest has been profoundly altered by human presence. This kind of research, I wasn't the only one to do it. Many colleagues also did research along the same lines. This kind of research has led to the understanding that the Amazonian forest is partly the unintended product of such plant management techniques. This is why it is absurd to regard the forest as wild nature. On the contrary, it is a kind of macro garden. Over many millennia, Amazonian native populations domesticated the main species cultivated there, gradually perfecting plant management techniques that were not different in principle from those they used in the management of forest resources. So slash and burn agriculture, or horticulture rather, and agroforestry are two sides of the same plant handling process. So the fact that what we call nature is often the product of human activity is also obvious in the way the Achuar view their relationship with plants and animals. Although their knowledge and expertise in botany, in agronomy, in animal ethology is stunning, they do not separate their technical know-how from their ability to establish working relationships with plants and animals and spirits, all kinds of non-humans, through all kinds of propitiatory mechanisms. These mechanisms, dreams, songs, etc., are convenient means of communication, of communicating with the soul of plants and animals who are deemed to be endowed with the same attributes, but most of the same attributes that humans possess. So in spite of their distinctive appearance, plants and animals are seen by the Achuar as real persons with whom they behave as social partners. Such an attitude, as most of you know, is in no way exceptional. All over the world, some peoples are conscious that non-humans do not form a domain that exists apart from humans, just to provide material and symbolic resources to the latter, but that non-humans are intrinsically enmeshed in the life of humans more and more often in an utterly negative way. This is why the notion of nature should be treated cautiously. It cannot be translated into most non-European languages and reflects a Western cosmology where humans and non-humans are ontologically distinct. It's an absurd dissociation since global warming, to begin with, has made us realize that the new climatic regime into which we have entered, call it the Anthropocene or the Capitalocene if you wish, is a terrible demonstration of the reverse. Humans have become a force of nature, or conversely, some so-called natural phenomena are partly social and historical. And this is the case for the climate as much as for the Amazonian rainforest. As a consequence, giving rights to nature is meaningless because nature is a Eurocentric metaphysical abstraction, and metaphysical abstractions cannot exert rights. The case of Ecuador, which many of you here know very well, is a sad reminder of this. The fact that nature has been endowed, or Pachamama has been endowed with rights in the Ecuadorian constitution, in no way prevented the Ecuadorian Amazon being sold to mining and oil companies, of course, to the detriment of the native populations who dwell there. This is why I favor instead giving legal personality or personhood, if you wish, to specific ecosystems clearly defined and circumscribed, which would be in a position to claim their rights through the humans who are components of the interconnected forms of life of these ecosystems, provided, of course, humans do not disrupt their balance. In such cases, sovereignty does not stem from an appropriation by humans of a piece of land, but the reverse. A mission of stewardship is entrusted to humans by a milieu, and aquatic ecosystems are particularly adequate for this reversal of the direction of appropriation because of the interconnectedness of their human and non-human components. Thus, it does not come as a surprise that the most interesting cases belong to this kind of ecosystem. The most interesting cases of granting a legal personality or even personhood belong to this kind of ecosystems, whether it's the Wanganui River in New Zealand, the Atrato River in Colombia, or perhaps even the Lake Erie on the Canada and US border. So a glacier, as the Mer de Glace, poses an altogether very different challenge because the human components of the ecosystem there are indirect or occasional. They are not as constitutive of the ecosystem as is the case in other aquatic ecosystems. And this is why I welcome this session of the tribunal for the opportunity to afford to consider a very different case of aquatic ecosystem. So I wish you the best in discussing this hot topic for a very cold ecosystem. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Philippe Descola. I think you raised very important issues which must be taken into consideration in the deliberations of this tribunal. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your wisdom with us. And I would now like to hand the floor to Judge Valerie Cabanes.
Thank you, Cormac. Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. We are gathered here today in this hearing for the case Mer de Glace, Sea of Ice, versus the French state and the French company Total. This glacier will be represented by Prosecutor Marine Izquierdo from the association Notre, Affaire, Tous, that works for climate justice. The situation of Mer de Glace will also be examined through the expertise of glaciologist and geomorphologist Jean-Baptiste Bosson. Also, several direct witnesses of the glacier will be heard. We're speaking about Fiona Mill and Jan Bornet from Mountain Wilderness Association. This complaint has to do with the melting of Mer de Glace glacier and the effects of climate change. It is situated in the French Alps. And we will be looking to determine the reason why this melting is occurring, consequences, and we will try to identify those responsible and accountable. I'd like to inform you that this hearing will be held in presence of the main accused. And unfortunately, we haven't received a response to the invitation to this tribunal of those held accountable to explain and represent their positions. The previous assumption is that the Mer de Glace glacier is part of an indivisible system, which is Mother Earth, and that we need to protect it without distinction based on its simple utility and use for humans. As a matter of fact, nature has rights. Certain countries have understood this and enacted laws. In Ecuador, the constitution foresees it. Pachamama has rights where life is reproductive, so that its existence can be respected comprehensively, as well as its structure, its functions, and its evolution processes. In Bolivia, the Mother Earth has the right to life, the right to diversity, the right to water, the right to clean air, the right to restoration, the right to live without contamination. In New Zealand, I am the river. The river is me. The river is a subject of rights, as well as the Te Huera forest. The cities have understood this as well. In Mexico, nature has the right to preservation, conservation, and protection. In Bonito, Brazil, nature has the right to exist, to prosper, and evolve. And all members of the natural community, humans and non-humans, have the right to an ecological, clean, and balanced environment. Citizens have the duty to defend and preserve nature for the future generations and for present generations as well as the members of all communities of the planet. Finally, judges in Colombia and India have raised their voices to defend rivers, glaciers, forests, and all the animal kingdom. They've recognized people as subjects and not objects. The Gange, Yamuna, Narmada, Atrato, the Gangotri, the Yamunotri, the Himalayas, and the Amazon region. They've raised their voices so that we have access to a clean environment to favor our children as well. We're talking about the Mer de Glace, and as a judge of this case, I'm open to find those must be held accountable to distinguish our relationships of interdependence, but also to talk about the right of the communities that rely on these clean and healthy environments. I am positive and I'm convinced that this is possible, and we need to recognize and defend the rights of Mother Earth and all the systems that surround it. I am open during this hearing to do everything that is possible to recognize and defend the rights of Mother Earth and to protect them. In this framework, we will listen to Pierre. He is an legal expert. And finally, I know that if we threaten the comprehensively of a glacier, we're also threatening a fundamental source of life, which is water. So with this, I declare this hearing open.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, Cormac. Rebecka, if you can continue.
Thank you. My name is Rebecka Lemoine, and I'm here today as a prosecutor on behalf of the Earth. Planet Earth, with its condition that enable the possibility of creating life forms among those us humans. We turn to nature for comfort, recreation, for silence, but sometimes the silent spring is talking its own language. In order to hear, we need to be humble, and we need the strength to embrace the messages. The absence of life is spreading. The variety of species and life forms gives us a variety of sounds, but one by one, their voices is stilled forever. Instead, we hear the earth screaming in vain, the sound of wildfires, the dry sound of sunburned soil, the sound of ice cracking and the glaciers dripping in a pace never witnessed before. These voices of Mother Earth need to be translated into human words. Therefore, as a prosecutor of the Earth, I'm here to raise the voice for all the beings that are being ignored and make sure to demand justice in line with the rights of nature and Mother Earth. With a changing climate, the whole Earth system is forced into a new state. The last 10,000 years of geological epoch Holocene has offered us humans, amongst other stable conditions, perfect for us to thrive. But I will not anymore call the direction we are going into as a state of thriving, because of human-made system are destroying the very foundation of the Earth system on which we all depend. Furthermore, we have taken away the possibility for non-human and nature and ecosystem to thrive, which is intrinsic rights. The examples of this can be made endlessly, but today we are here to talk about one of them. For a lot of glaciers, a harder world means that time is simply up. Regardless of how much or how fast we can cut emissions of greenhouse gases, it will still not be enough to save them. However, this is not the case for the Sea of Ice, the Mer de Glace. The Sea of Ice represents hope and great motivation that our actions today will matter and make a difference for tomorrow, because it's not yet too late to save this glacier. As the prosecutor of the Earth, I'm not only representing endangered species, not only mammals, not only visible or known species. I'm here to represent life on Earth, with all its wilderness and all the unknown life, all the soil, all the water, liquid as well as frozen. Crime has been committed. Greenhouse gas emissions are still being allowed to rise the temperature. Neither the state nor the corporation is doing enough to stop it. As a prosecutor of the earth, and especially Mer de Glace, I declare that there are activities that threatens the ecosystem of the glacier and thereby violates the rights of the water in its frozen form, according to the Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. Because of these crimes, it will be impossible to protect and uphold healthy environment and in and around the glacier. Mer de Glace thereby is in imminent danger of irreversible devastation due to continued abuse by government policies permitting and licensing authorities and courts and lack of protective measures. The glacier Mer de Glace is the victim in this case. The main defendant in this case are the State of France and the company Total. These parties have been given the opportunity to participate here today, but has decided not to. I ask permission of the court to start these proceedings. I intend to present evidence and arguments for these alleged crimes. I will call upon experts and witnesses, and I begin by calling up the lawyer, Marine Giesquardo, to give her statement. But before that, I wonder if you can please explain why you are legitimate to be speaking for this case on behalf of the glacier. Please.
Merci, Madame la Procureure.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. My name is Marine Izquierdo. I'm a lawyer and a member of the association Notre Affaire à Tous that works to defend the rights of nature. I've been working for 2 years and a half in different advocacy projects to attach to Article 1 of the Constitution to make the state accountable for the committing of different ecological crimes. I also work with the different alliances for the defense of the rights of nature. And in this specific case, I'll be the lawyer defending this case, the Sea of Ice.
Thank you. I welcome you to present the case.
Well, for this presentation, I will work with the presentation that was presented some days ago. In the first part, I will be talking about the facts for this case, and later I will be speaking about the damages caused to Mer de Glace. Then I will speak about persons or parties held accountable or responsible, so we can talk about mechanisms to preserve this sea of ice and prevent the melting of the ice. To recall the general context, well, first, these are glaciers are good indicators of climate change, and this is closely linked to the emission of greenhouse gases. This is linked to water cycles on Earth. For example, it reflects sunshine, and thus the melting of the ice is important. This energy that's been sent on the space will be transformed in heat, and this will increase the temperature on Earth. Glaciers are water reservoirs. They concentrate important amounts of fresh water of the planet. Between 1994 and 2017, the Earth has lost 28 billion tons of ice. And this will continue if nothing is done to solve global warming. If this continues so, our future does not hold any any landscape that could improve this situation. Talking about the impact of climate change, I'd simply like to recall the report of the IPCC of October 8, 2018 that speak about the consequences of global warming of 1.5 degrees and the impact that this may have. The conclusion of these reports that global warming observed by industrial activities have notable impacts in our planet, the composition of the atmosphere, increasing of oceans, and also the increase of water levels in our oceans. On September 25, 2019, on the ocean, there was a report about cryosphere and climate change. This report was presented and say that increase is from 35% and 36%, and glaciers would disappear if this level of emissions continues. This is one of the main causes of the increase of water levels, the melting of glaciers. And this shows, of course, damage to mountain areas in the Himalayas and the Andes. Hydroelectric production is also impacting, and this is in glaciers. We will also continue to see global damage. The social and environmental consequences will be gigantic and without precedence in the history of our planet. We talk about the importance of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Regarding Mer de Glace, this is the greatest glacier in France, and it's located close to Mont Blanc in Haute-Savoie in France. The current surface has 4 square kilometers, and I speak currently because of the 19th century. It's been affected by climate change and is losing its surface. Every year it loses from 30 to 40 meters of length and from 4 to 5 meters of thickness. I will be showing some images so you can know a little better what we're speaking about. As you can see, this is a photograph taken in 1995 and a photograph taken in 2020. You can see the draw of the glacier, and we see that only little rocks are left in this landscape. I'll go back to my presentation now. So talking about different scenarios, we see that if this continues with the same levels of gas emissions, and if we do not respect the Paris Agreement, we will not be able to preserve what is left of the glacier. You can see that the Mer de Glace and Sea of Ice has the possibility to maintain its mass if the Paris Agreement is respected. Now I will speak about the damages caused by the melting of the glacier and the violation of the rights of the glacier. The identity of the Sea of Ice, as we saw, has been transformed, and this is due to global warming. More sediments are accumulating, and these natural transformations do not allow the Mer de Glace to comply with its natural process. The prejudice is current and future because the emissions of greenhouse gas emissions continue participating to global warming. And this has been happening for years. In other words, if we would stop all our emissions, then CO2 would remain on our surface for still another 1,000 years. This is contradictory to Article 2 to the Universal Charter of the Rights of Mother Earth, to have the right to generate their capacities without the perturbation of human activities, the right of living and to exist, as well as the right to maintain a life, to self-regulate and interact. So this has generating these life cycle, and this has not been respected. Another damage, we see the damages to adjacent ecosystems. This will be shared by our expert Jean-Baptiste Bosson. 3, we also have the impact on the access to water and fundamental rights to access water. Fiona Mead, representing our association, will speak further about this. We also talk about the threat to high mountain activities. And the third part has to do with the persons who we've identified as responsible. First, we have the French state. It is up to the French government to actively and effectively act to contain the magnitude of the changes in the climate under its obligations to protect nature, human health, and security as stated in the Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Earth, in the Constitution, in the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedom, and in national and international norms. Madam and Mr. Judges, these are obligations. This has been contained in the document we have presented before. I will now go on to the second person that we found responsible. It's the Total company. The Total Group is the first French company to which 0.9% of global greenhouse emissions are attributed to. This Total is not respecting its commitments to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. This has been identified as key in the fight against global warming. According to the Carbon Major Report published in 2017, Total is, as a result, one of the 20 companies contributing the most to climate change on a world scale. I wish to precise that in conclusion, have recognized the importance and also the environmental damage that the company has caused. It's important to know that Total Group is the first French company responsible for global greenhouse gas emissions. Total is one of the 20 companies contributing the most to climate change on a world scale due to its important activities of fracking and extracting oil and natural gas. Total violates the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth, the environmental duty of care, and the law on the duty of care. I will not deepen on this juridical items. I will now talk about the measures to be taken to protect the Mer de Glace. Of course, we have the respect of the right of Mer de Glace. Mer de Glace has the right to regenerate itself, so we can save at least a part of the sea of ice. Different from other glaciers that will disappear, Mer de Glace must have the right to keep its natural cycles, as well as all the surrounding ecosystems that have also been impacted. Other measures are the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions the major cause of the disappearance of the sea of ice is the global warming caused by the increase of greenhouse gas emissions. It's not possible to maintain this commitment to the reduction of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Another measure is the recognition of a special status for the Sea of Ice. There are different legal mechanisms to preserve the Sea of Ice. Our expert, Pierre, will later speak about this in depth. Mountains are a natural entity linked to nature. These are natural heritage that need the implementation of policies that allow its protection. This, unfortunately, is not well applied, and Sea of Ice has a modality of preservation. This must be sized by the communities when talking about territorial management. We also have the APHN, which are the prefectural orders on the protection of natural habitats. Glaciers are part of natural habitats that need protection. You can say that in a protection procedure, this is part of the environmental code that forbids the degradation and alteration of these natural habitats. When speaking about the Sea of Ice, a first APHN was recently signed with the visit of President Macron to Mont Blanc not long ago. But this is not a very strong protection, and these measures do not consider all the areas of application. Another important measure are protected areas. These create a protected area around the Sea of Ice, taking into account the need to preserve the glacier and the need to protect local economy. They also act and try to mitigate the effects of global warming. About natural reserves, national parks, and aquatic parks. The natural reserve must benefit from high levels of protection to forbid human activities in the natural reserve. In this sense, we have the Convention of Biodiversity Protection, and in this framework, France has committed to protect these areas. This is part of the goals of this strategy from 2021 to 2023. Currently, Mount Sea of Ice does not benefit from this status. There is a national strategy to avoid future consequences, and the state must establish a strong protection and forbid certain activities. Of course, we cannot stop all activities. We must also take into consideration local economy, but we've discussed this in a tribunal to know what are the infrastructure projects that should be reviewed. Now, I'd like to speak about the formulation of the request. We have different mechanisms, the Paris Agreement, among others, that must be considered. We're asking the judge for the rights of nature to acknowledge the violation of the Sea of Ice right to exist, regenerate, and maintain its life cycles, acknowledge the threat that the disappearance of the Sea of Ice constitutes for the local population's access to water on adjacent ecosystem and on the human high mountain activity, recognize the responsibility of the French state in Total in the violation of the Sea of Ice rights, order the French state in Total, in accordance with the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth, to draft and implement efficient norms and legislation to defend, protect, and preserve the rights of Mother Earth, and notably for the French state to take necessary measures to limit greenhouse gas emission and contain global warming, and to create a protected area around the Sea of Ice. For Total to publish a new duty of care plan, which includes concrete measures which the company will have to implement in order to limit greenhouse gas emissions during its activity. To promote and encourage practices that are respectful to the Sea of Ice, and to promote economic systems in harmony with Mother Earth and compatible with the rights recognized in the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen Desguiado. I have one question. Your request for the French state to limit the greenhouse gas emissions and to protect an area around Mer de Glace in the 10% of territory put on the strong protection. But as we aim to switch paradigm and live in harmony with nature, reducing the damage will not be enough. Have you any request that aims to give back to nature but has wrongfully been taken from her? Please.
Concernant plus spécifiquement la mer de glace.
Regarding the Sea of Ice, given that part of it has disappeared, unfortunately, we cannot return to the Sea of Ice what has already been lost, as well as species that have been lost. We will never be able to bring them back. Our recommendations are to reduce the greenhouse gas emission through presenting this to the tribunal, finding mechanisms and measures, and knowing that this has been recommended by groups of experts, and in the case of the century where the tribunal will need to grant its verdict to implement these measures.
Thanks a lot, Maureen Desguiado. I know Judge Valerie Cabanes have one question, so Valerie Cabanes, I give you the floor.
Merci, Madame la Procureure.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. This is a question that is also addressed and similar to what Madam Prosecutor asked. I simply like to ask for a clarification. You've explained on one hand that the Mer de Glace has the opportunity, has an option to be saved, to be preserved. If we limit the emission of greenhouse gases, applying the commitments, the Agreement of Paris, the commitments taken by France in the limitation of the emission of greenhouse gases. But he also explained that the 95% of the glacier of France will disappear, and that generally glaciers around the planet are melting, that climate is changing, is warming, and even if we stopped greenhouse gas emissions today, this would last for thousands of years on the surface. The question is, what we're trying to defend has to do with the fact that we are also here, as you well mentioned, to respect the rights of Mother Earth, that glaciers are a component of Mother Earth, and what you explained regarding the climate really poses a threat, a danger for the life on Earth and Mother Earth. Wouldn't there be a conflict of interest between asking, from one hand, to limit the greenhouse gas emissions in the framework of a local system, such as the case of France, and at the same time asking to preserve, protect, and recognize the rights of Mother Earth? I simply try to understand how we can proceed in this sense Should we looking at the glacier as an entity, part of Mother Earth, or looking at it individually with your request to limit the greenhouse gas emissions? Well, the glacier is indeed part of Mother Earth, and this is precisely the difficulty of changing the paradigm, going to an eco-centered perspective. Now, if you could please repeat your question regarding the reduction of gas emissions. I'd simply like to understand your final objective, what you will present to it. Is this really about limiting the emissions of greenhouse gases, or limiting this based on the explanations that you have provided? I think that this will be completed by the witnesses. We're speaking about limiting them. It would be impossible to stop with the emission completely, precisely to contain a global warming and to preserve as much as possible the life cycle of the sea of ice. Thank you. I think we'll have the opportunity to continue discussing this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Marine Gisquierdo. I wonder, does the President Cormac Cullinan have any more questions? The floor is yours.
Thank you. I was interested, you have asked the French state to take various measures. I was interested whether you think it would be appropriate for the French state to pass a law which recognized the Sea of Ice as a legal person with rights. Whether you think that would be an appropriate thing for the tribunal to call for.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your question. We currently consider that the Sea of Ice must be recognized as a subject of rights, and that rights have been infringed by the inaction of the French state and the company Total. So we really think that recognizing the rights of Sea of Ice and other natural entities will allow to balance the rights of these natural meant to it's the individual and collective rights. It's a matter of value to recognize these ecosystems so that later we can pass laws that can adapt to what we are requesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marine Gisquierdo. I now call for the scientific expert Jean-Baptiste Poisson, who is a glaciologist and geomorphologist, author of the first study on the glaciers of the World Heritage of Humanity. Jean-Baptiste Poisson will intervene on the scientific aspects to testify as an expert. Jean-Baptiste Poisson, could you please describe why you are righteous to be speaking on the behalf of the glacier in this case, please?
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation.
Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you for giving me the floor. If I understood correctly, I must explain why I'm legitimate to talk about this. Well, I'm a glaciologist and I have a PhD about regarding alpine glaciers. I grew very close to the Sea of Ice. I know it since I'm very small. I've been very close to this environment. I still carry out high-level activities, but some years ago I've been working on the protection of nature and specifically the protection of glaciers. Some weeks ago, Zurich, I presented the first TED for the conservation of glaciers in the world. I'm trying to bring scientific knowledge closer to people to understand why it's so important to protect glaciers today, what are the stakes, and that is the reason why I've accepted to be the scientific advisor for this tribunal. I'd like to present my elements about the sea of ice. Well, I would like to please now share my screen with you all. I'll start with this photograph taken by my glaciologist colleagues, and it's a time lapse as of 2008. It's not as recent. We'll go directly to the PowerPoint I have prepared. I prepared some slides to present what the Mer de Glace is, and also to put this in context and how this refers to the evolution of glaciers on our planet Earth. Well, first, this photograph, and I'd like to speak about this area in detail. We'll start with a more general introduction to understand what is a glacier, where we find them, and what are the figures related to glaciers. Well, we will find glaciers throughout the world, and we call them the perpetual snows. They're not only present in winter, so we commonly see them as we see here. It's called the accumulation area. This is compacted, and here we see in this image how when it's compacted, it becomes a compact mass of ice. And this is what we call sedimentary ice that can be that is formed by the compaction of snow in cold region. This will be deformed and go the surface of the planet as we see here. And in this area, we're no longer in perpetual snow. Here, weather is a little warmer. They start melting. This area is called the ablation melt area. As a matter of fact, a glacier has two areas, an area that will be covered by snow all year. This is the accumulation area, and the ablation area. And during summer, we can walk on this ice. Through this picture, you can understand why glaciers, why we speak so much about glacier, why they are susceptible to global warming. And here, with the change of climate, this will also make the mass vary. Either the mass that is on this upper part or in this lower part. We glaciologists, what we try to do when we get to know the status of a glacier, will know, and we will be able to compare what the glacier will be gaining in this area and what it will be losing in a year. When we hear that the glaciers are negative, it's when they're losing more than what they're gaining. In some cases, the melting is more rapidly happens more rapidly than when it's gaining ice and snow. Hopefully, this was clear. We will find glaciers throughout our continent. We find it, of course, on the poles where it's very cold, and also in mountain ranges where weather allows it. We have two continental masses that are gigantic in the Antarctica and Groenland, but there are then other 210,000 glaciers. I've marked them in black. We see very few in Africa. We see them around our different continents. This mass in form of ice is stored in gigantic masses. If we want to talk about figures, glaciers correspond 10% of lands, and And what is very important is the equivalent of sea levels stored in these masses in the ice sheets and in the black dots correspond to 66 meters of sea level. If this would disappear, then suddenly the level of the seas would increase significantly. Cartography and the form of our planet would change completely, given by the increase of water levels. In the Alps, we have approximately 3,500 glaciers, and in the French Alps, we have approximately 580. In the massif of Mont Blanc, the highest point in this mountain range, we have Chamonix here, that is very well known for alpinism in the world, and Mer de Glace is this glacier here we see in this large basin at the heart of French Alps. It's one of the largest alpine glaciers. And the fact that Chamonix is one of the places where this snow tourism takes place, and then the ice, the Sea of Ice, of course, has an important history of high mountain activities of this area, and is also sensitive to climate impacts. To frame a little bit what we're speaking about, the surface of Mer de Glace is approximately 30 square kilometers, a half of Manhattan. So it's quite large. Water volumes is probably more important. It's 2.1 cube kilometers consolidated here. For those who know this lake, it's twice the size of Lake Annecy. So this is a phenomenal mass of ice. And the maximum thickness is of 330 meters. If we compare it, it has even more than the Eiffel Tower. So imagine the importance of these masses. I simply wanted to go back a little bit to the climate context that you all know, but we cannot speak about glaciers if we do not talk about the global situation. From the 1900s to 2020, it has an increase of 1.1 degrees Celsius. This is directly linked to greenhouse gas emissions due to human activity. And evidently, as I mentioned, these are very sensitive to climate change. So our glacier masses are impacted, and the system is affected. The loss is huge, and we can see it in this curve, in this line. The consequences are direct and are huge on Earth. From the 1900s to 2020, the mean sea level rise of the 23 centimeter, mainly related to glacier melt. So consequences are seen today, are visible in our planet. If we focus on the alpine situation, we have a hypersensibility, whether in the Alps, where if we were to have the same temperature curve, it's even more significant. In the following in the following decades, we will see an important increase. If we compare to the 1850 glacier volume, 80% will have melted in future decades in response to this climate forcing. These are variations that we've been seeing since the 1900s. This is a huge volume, and we will have an important loss. Now, speaking specifically about Mer de Glace, I hope my explanations were clear. I want to thank all my colleagues. This is a work that has been carried out collectively. Glacio Clim has been working on this, collecting data regarding this glacier. So between 1850 and today, we've lost 20% of the area and a withdrawal of 3 kilometers. On the other hand, if we look at the volume that has been lost since the 1900, I told you that this is the glacier of 30 square kilometers. This corresponds to 45 meters. This is huge. This has been distributed and has finished in the Mediterranean and has contributed to its increase of the marine environment. So this is all due to the increase of global warming. Since 1900, we see an accelerated melt of the glaciers. Well, these images were shared by my colleague Luc Moreau. This is a photo of 1865. These were the first possible images, and today the Sea of Ice in 2020. You can see this is the area where tourists and alpinists arrive from Chamonix to arrive to the Sea of Ice. So I think we realize we're able to see the huge surface of ice that has been lost. If we explain this and we zoom in a little bit, the temperatures of our planet are increasing when there's a lot more melting. You can see how before these looked like ice waves, and today we have almost nothing left of it, and now you see that it's covered by debris. So our mass of ice has lost its thickness and it can no longer play its role to transfer. And so if we see mountain erosion, this is also impacting negatively and it's becoming black, it's full of sediment. So it can no longer assume and play its role like a bulldozer to evacuate what it receives. Now, what can we expect for the future? Well, there are two large climate scenarios, two extreme climate scenarios. So generally, well, this is a report of the IPCC. We have a scenario of low emissions, close to the Paris Agreement objective, trying to limit the greenhouse gas emissions. Though this will continue, this can become stable up until 2100. So this would be the optimism scenario. There can be several scenarios between these two, and the other extreme scenario that we call business as usual scenario. Here we see that global warming increases and continues to do so in the following decades. We'll see several degrees of warming in the following decades. And we saw, as I explained, that the Alps are very sensitive to this. So in the Alps this can translate into 6, 7 degrees, given this area is so sensitive. Well, behind this, there's a lot of scientific research and work. We, as humans, we still have a key role to play to save our ice masses. If we consider the volume, this is what would happen, the two great trends that we could expect. This is a percentage of the volume with the application of the Paris Agreement and the commitments that states and citizens have abided to, we could lose 80% of current mass, but we could save 80%. And given if the temperature stabilizes, this mass will stabilize as well. We'll be able to save a huge part. So I want this message to be strong. And on the contrary, we can lose 35%, so a larger amount of mass, if the curve continues growing, it's irreversible, then we have a destruction of our glaciers if we do not stop global warming. This is a study I carried out last year. If there's an important protection, we see that these figures are a little stronger, a little more severe regarding the ice, the sea of ice, as Valerie Cabanes mentioned a moment ago. Either we can save 70% of 35%. We could save 1/3 of the current masses, or as Marine mentioned a moment ago, we would have an impact on alpine glaciers if we do not adapt to the commitments. If we zoom into the Mer de Glace, given that it's one of the largest glaciers in the Alps, figures are larger. There's a divergence of data, either talking about the stabilization of the weather, saving 70% of the current mass and reaching a balance, saving an important part of it, versus an extension of the sea of ice at the end of the century. So we see several scenarios, either a balance or an irreversible and catastrophic loss. And I'll explain this in my last slide I'm trying to answer to the question, why should we protect glaciers? Why is it so important? Why is it a key conservation objective? Well, this is the answer that different glaciologists want to provide, and that myself I've been published in my studies. The objective is to explain the following: to show every human being. We sometimes don't feel the importance of glaciers in our everyday life. So we really need to work to save glaciers. The first thing, they have a fundamental influence globally. They impact global environment. If we lose our Mer de Glace, we will lose many other glaciers. The marine levels will increase if we do not protect them. These are scientific data of what would happen with the water levels. This will affect millions and millions of human beings in the world. The Sea of Ice is only one of the glaciers, but of course it will contribute to the increase of sea levels around the world. This is 10% of the planet that is white, and the planet will continue warming, and the glaciers play an important role for climate balance. The second reason is that they guarantee water security and hence direct consumption, agriculture, hydropower in numerous regions. When we have droughts, it is often due to this climate change. Whatever happens, many of our glaciers will melt, and we will lose an annual discharge from 15 to 20%. We'll have less water for all human beings, for all activities, and less waters for all the ecosystems. Today, we started with the water ceremony, and we see the key role it plays in our everyday lives. So the Rhone Basin has 12 million inhabitants in the world. They will have 13% less water from now to the end of the century. It's especially in summer that we will have less water. If the pressure is larger, impacts will be greater. We will also have a very negative impact. The contribution in summer of the sea of ice in this melting here is 60% of water that flows in summer. So it's 35% in 2100. And then glaciers also play important roles to maintain V in all its forms, biodiversity, human activities, and this has a huge influence. It contributes to nature, to humans, in culture and aesthetics and science, and has economic importance. In conclusion, glaciers have many contributions. We do not know all glaciers, or the large public do not know them all, but we need to protect them. This is a super resource. They have the right to exist by themselves, and this is the objective of this tribunal, changing the paradigms and protecting the rights of nature. Humanity has always lived with and thanks to the contribution delivered by glaciers. Their disappearance will have unprecedented dramatic consequences. The increase of seawater levels, as we mentioned, and the negative impact in many other areas that we've mentioned. If you have more interest, I have many scientific references to which we can refer to. Hopefully I kept my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste Passon. First, I wonder, when you answer the question about why Mer de Glace should be protected, you also mention services to humans and ecosystems. But according to rights of nature, the rights should be recognized without distinction of any kind, such as use to human beings or any other status. Can you see reasons for Mer de Glace to be protected regardless the potential services? Please, Jean-Baptiste Passon, you may answer.
C'est une question difficile pour moi.
Well, this is a difficult question to respond to. Maybe I would need more competences in law that unfortunately I do not have, but we've spoken about this change of the paradigm. I'm a glaciologist. I'm in love with glaciers. They have the right to exist because they contribute to regulate marine levels. They have the right to exist just by themselves because they have existed before humans were on Earth. They probably exist in other planets as well. So they are a component. They're part of nature that is present because they have to be there because it's a climatic system that allows them to exist. So consequently, I'm not protecting glaciers because of the ecosystem services they provide. By trying to find arguments why they have an influence on our daily lives, well, I would like to encourage people to protect them and different stakeholders to protect them as well.
Thank you for your answer, Jean-Baptiste Passon. I now give the possibility to the judge, Lisa Mead, and then to Cormac Cullinan, followed by Valerie Cabanes to ask your question for Jean-Baptiste Passon. So please, Lisa Mead, feel free to ask, and then in that order.
Thank you, Rebecka.
So Jean-Baptiste, you're here as a scientist, first and foremost, and I wanted to say thank you for all your incredible work and also that of your colleagues in bringing the extent of the losses of the ice here in other places since the 1850s. You said that you grew up near to the glacier, the Mer de Glace, and so you're really a part of the land where this glacier exists. And I'm wondering about your own relationship with the glacier, what it means to you personally. You've said a little bit in your previous answer, but I would love for you to expand on that. So what the glacier means to you personally beyond your scientific involvement with it. Thank you.
Pour votre question,
To answer to your question, my name is Jean-Baptiste Bosson, and the glacier on the top of Mont Blanc is the Bosson Glacier. So this is a very common name in the Alps. I'm not an alpinist. I don't often walk on the glaciers. However, they've always been part of my life, part of my landscape. When I wake up, I look up to the mountains. They offer this beauty. I have a very deep link to them. I started my studies in political science before I studied glaciology, but I've always been attracted. I did not understand why, but one day I knew I was going to become a glaciologist. This is a force of attraction. I feel part of them, part of glaciers, and I think that, well, today I understand that my objective is to understand and to help raise awareness on the importance of protecting glaciers, the role they play, and I think this is what attracted me the most. And besides this is an excellent instrument to work and to mitigate global warming that is threatening our life on the planet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste. Now, Cormac, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Jean-Baptiste, thank you very much indeed for your presentation, which I found fascinating. Like my colleague, I would be interested to hear you speaking about, if you were asked to speak for the glacier that you love, and you were speaking to humans to say what we should be aiming at in terms of reducing global warming, I would be interested to hear what you think the glacier would say, because from your presentation, it seems to me that aiming at restricting increases in global average temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius, as is set out in the Paris Agreement, is not going to help many glaciers. There will still be an existential threat and many will disappear. So my question really is, what would a glacier say to us? Should we be aiming at restricting emissions to pre-industrial levels? What would be appropriate if a glacier was to give humanity advice on this issue?
It's the first time I've been asked to speak on behalf of the glacier. Thank you for that, but it's very difficult. Well, if I were a glacier, I would ask humans to respect nature. As a matter of fact, the challenge of climate change today is not the fact of climate changing itself, because this is the norm. And glaciers were larger before and they're smaller now. That's not the concern. If this wouldn't happen, then the Earth would be completely covered by glaciers. But simply, I would ask humans to recall and to remind them that we are an element that is part of the ecosystem, that we are protecting water and environment as a whole, as no other species has done before, and that human beings need to become responsible as other species. They are part of a whole, and for them to understand that we cannot live without this interdependence. that is what I would ask human beings, to be more humble, more responsible.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste Basson. I now give the word to Judge Valerie Cabanes, please.
Merci pour ces explications.
Thank you so much for your explanations. They have resonated in me because I always try to understand if the rights of glaciers have been infringed, but also to look at all the live communities that rely on them. You have explained if all glaciers melt from now to 2100. Well, you've told us that if all glaciers would melt, then the increase of sea level would increase significantly. I read that in millions of years ago, oceans were higher in more than 60 meters. I'd like to know if you corroborate with this, if you agree with this. What has been announced to us that regarding a journey, if we continue with the business as usual, that seems to be the case now. We've been announced an increase of 2 degrees. I cannot imagine our Mother Earth as we've known it with a more than 60-meter increase in our sea levels. I think this is a threat that goes beyond our understanding. And to go back to more concrete aspects, talking about the territory, you also explained that the Rhone basin has been reduced by what's been happening with the Sea of Ice, and you know that many infrastructures, but the balance of Mother Earth, the nuclear centrals, wouldn't this also be an existential threat, a catastrophe that you spoke about an ice sheet? I'm a very visual person. If I imagine what would happen this and how it could provoke a tsunami, and during summertime, how this would affect us because of this lack of water, for example, in the Rhone, or because water is too warm. Could you please explain a little further if I'm too worried about this, or if indeed, once again, well, I ask the question, should we limit greenhouse gas emissions, or should we find a system to completely stop them?
Très compliqué aussi. Donc, première chose sur le côté climatique, oui.
A very complicated question as well. Well, we know that the sea levels were different millions of years ago. That is correct, and it's mainly due to our human activities. Just as other species, we would need to adapt. Unfortunately, we are at the origin of these problems and these catastrophes, as we've mentioned. The population that lives on the coastal areas will suffer disasters that the world has not known to this date. Many people would need to be displaced if the sea level increases, or if there is no more water in the river basins. And then talking about the challenges, well, yes, the melting of glaciers is a threat, could be dangerous. We must not underestimate the catastrophes that this could bring. I think that the main danger is the increase of sea level. This is for sure. And talking about energy sources where it's ambivalent, I know there are many questions behind this. There are many renewable energies that are working, but there is less and less water in the dam. We have less resources. It will be more difficult to produce this type of energy. Regarding nuclear energy, if we have less fresh water from the glacier, this could also pose questions that go beyond my knowledge on how nuclear centrals would work. We would need to make changes and to reflect upon the source of energy for the world. We will need to find new sources of energy, of course. And this is linked to the last question, to the emission of greenhouse gas emission. We must definitely limit them, limit our way of consumption, limit the consumption of energy as well. Well, I understand there are risks for humans, but for every living being. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Judge Tom Goldtooth, and I will also ask you to try to keep it short since time is almost up. But please, Tom, the floor is yours. Tom, your mic.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Sean, for your testimony. Very, very knowledgeable. I participate in the annual Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I participate in the Indigenous Caucus, but other working groups. And there's been the formation of a process for recognition of traditional knowledge, but not just indigenous traditional knowledge, but local communities. So this is being viewed as value to the nation states, the parties to the UN climate meeting, that they have to take into consideration in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So my question is that as you look at the science of glaciers, is there still a remaining local traditional knowledge of the communities, the villages in the lower elevations, that they've been there for centuries and centuries, where that traditional knowledge of the importance of the glacier is in their songs. It's in their memory that's still being passed on, which has value. I'm asking this question if for you to respond. Thank you.
Merci pour la question, Tom.
Thank you, Tom, for your question. I'm not a specialist of the cultural aspects surrounding glaciers, but I know that people have always lived close to glaciers. There is a horizontal relationship, or rather, it's been respectful up to this point. And from what I've known, we are living in harmony for centuries and living from the water of the glacier. Culturally, wondered by the glacier. I'm thinking about La Valais region in Switzerland. They profit from the water from the glacier to irrigate the valleys, and this is a knowledge that exists for hundreds of years. So evidently, we do have scientific knowledge, and we must use all the knowledge, ancestral knowledge that we have to protect the glaciers.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste Poisson. I now call for the third witness, Fiona Mill, who is an advisor of the regeneration of industrial and terrestrial ecosystems. Fiona Mill, why are you legitimate to testify on behalf of the glacier? Please, Fiona.
Merci Madame la procureure. Donc, je m'appelle Fiona Mill, je suis bénévole.
Thank you. My name is Fiona Mill. I'm a volunteer. I've been working for the resilience of ecosystem for 5 years, and I work in regards to climate risks. The work of mountain wilderness is active in several countries in Europe and Asia. In France, the association was founded in 1988, an association that protects mountain and impact. Our association is open to all of those who love mountains, support nature and mountains, and this is based on the respect of ecosystems and human and non-human inhabitants. And our action addresses to maintain natural balances, to propose a different mountain approach, a gentler approach related to tourism, sports practice, and to maintain a mountain economy that is diversified. Many volunteers work the mountain in high mountains, in the valleys, or they're simply mountain lovers. I personally live in Paris, but I feel mountains as my second home. All inhabitants of the mountain are affected by climate change. We can already feel the impact of global warming in valleys or in different French departments. Now I'd like to mention some impacts in the case of the disappearance of the sea of ice and the impact on high mountain activities, and I'd also like to talk about the impacts on water cycles. In high mountains, it's the guides who are concerned the most. The disappearance of the sea of ice will have a direct impact on tourists and high mountain activities. The melting of sea of ice would impact the work of guides of high mountain, such as the case of Jan Borne. He is the founder of Alpine Lines, a company, and also an active member of Mountain Wilderness. I propose for you to listen to his testimonial.
Bonjour à tous. Moi, je vais vous parler d'un petit témoignage sur
Hello, everyone.
les-
I'd like to share a very short testimony on the life on the glacier as a mountain professional.
cette saison maintenant. Je
From this season, I am the high mountain guide
notamment en montagne, mais pas que.
in
Et
Chamonix. And I'd like to talk to you about glaciers because for us, mountain guides,
les glaciers incarnent
glaciers are part of our everyday life. They represent
que nous mettons derrière
many
ce
things.
montagne. Et puis, ils représentent aussi
Represent this
cette
practice,
qu'on fait là-haut, qui est l'alpinisme,
our practice,
qui est un peu la
alpinism.
symbolique et historique qui fait
This
la
is
force
the
de ce glacier.
strength
D'ailleurs,
of our profession. UNESCO has classified glaciers as intangible heritage in all seasons.
en terrain rocheux ou glaciaire. Et donc, on retrouve ce caractère de haute montagne, ce caractère glaciaire. Et
Finally,
finalement,
glaciers are
on peut dire
in
qu'ils sont à la haute
high
montagne des grands alpinistes comme
mountains,
Bonatti, comme Cassin, comme
and they are the source of our
l'alpinisme.
alpine activities.
Bon, ces glaciers, ils se
They are
resserrent
withdrawing
d'année en
year
année.
after year. They are melting.
Ça
We
semble
cannot deny this.
arrêter.
We're living this day after day.
Et puis, on le sent, hein, il laisse place à de grandes dalles sombres.
The
Et en fait,
landscape
plusieurs sentiments qui
is
se mêlent
changing. This
face à
brings
ça
up
quand on le
so
vit.
many
Le
feelings.
premier, évidemment, c'est la nostalgie.
We feel
Et je vais vous partager
nostalgic.
un petit peu mon ami
My
Olivier,
friend,
c'est un photographe qui aime
my
documenter ces
photographer
paysages qui se
friend,
transforment. Et
He has called this the damaged mountain. This is a way of looking at things. It's a nostalgic way to look at things. And at the same time, we cannot go to the mountains without having these nostalgic feelings. We are resigned of what is happening. We are witnesses, but we feel we cannot make any changes ourselves. We are there observing all these changes, all these negative impact for this ecosystem.
Ou dessus, bien sûr. On marche dessus ou on s'en échappe. Alors on s'en échappe par le haut en accédant à des parois.
It's difficult to continue working because when the glaciers withdraw, there are many areas in which we cannot work, we cannot set our camps. And this is a huge dilemma for us.
Est-ce qu'on aménage la montagne ou on se retire? Et bon, ce dilemme-là, il est dur. Parce qu'on n'a pas envie de se le poser.
We want to continue going there. And when we go to the glacier, when we get there,
en se retirant, il laisse la place à de grandes moraines. Alors les moraines, c'est quoi? C'est des gros amas de...
we see that there are larger areas of sand and rocks that are very unstable. This becomes even dangerous.
Ça, c'est boule en permanence. On le voit notamment quand on traverse...
when we access the Sea of Ice, when we climb it, we can see these open spaces of the mountain before us. So now when we see this, we not only feel nostalgic, but we're also afraid.
Parce que les glaciers,
glaciers, for me, are an essential part of my life. But without the snow, there is a release of many rocks, many stones, and these are unforeseeable. I have an anecdote to share, something that happened this summer. I was with a client in an area where no one goes,
c'est à l'envers du Mont Blanc,
a very wild area.
On faisait une itinérance qui devait nous conduire, qui nous a conduit d'ailleurs jusqu'au sommet du Mont Blanc.
During 5 days, we were climbing at the Italian side of the Mont Blanc, where we still see beautiful glaciers. When going down,
et donc en haut, petit col, c'était.
When we were at the summit, it was sunrise. It was a beautiful moment, and I asked my client to stop for a moment to take full advantage of that beautiful landscape.
Mais le couloir était plein ouest, alors
But everything was looking good. It was very white. It was the end of June.
L'isotherme zéro était haut. Et puis,
and when we were rappelling our way down, we heard a very strong noise. We raised our heads. We wanted to know where this noise was coming from.
Et donc il y avait une paroi assez haute au-dessus de nous et tout d'un coup on voit une
And
espèce
then
de
we
jet.
saw a great amount of snow and rocks before us. We did not know where they were going to fall, right next to us or far from us. And finally they landed 50 meters, 100 meters from us.
Un quart d'heure plus tard, on était dans la zone quoi. Et donc
so we were taking our time. The fact of taking this time at the summit is what actually saved our lives. So we no longer have this certainty that we've learned from our school of guides. We no longer have this certainty. It's so uncertain. We can no longer be sure of anything. So the end of the glaciers would be the end of our world. Well, in history, we've always adapted. We've always been able to adapt ourselves to mountain conditions, but this specific adaptation will be hurtful, will be very difficult because it will take away our freedom. And this freedom, of course, is not only linked to glaciers, but it's very much linked to glaciers. And this freedom will melt together with a glacier. And I'm afraid of this because glaciers are a symbol of this freedom. And looking at them, thinking about the fact of losing them really makes me feel very anxious. So hopefully this small testimonial, these words have been useful. Love to have met you in this world of those of us who love the mountains. So see you soon.
Donc, finalement, on voit bien avec ce que transmet Yann dans son témoignage, c'est le besoin.
Yan's message was so clear. This need, this quest to adapt to new conditions, and the disappearance of the glacier could have direct impacts on a professional activity. But beyond that, he said that guides have always known how to adapt. That his main fear is the disappearance of this part of his life that he's grown with. It's his connection to the mountain, the relationship with high mountain activity, which is has to do with a very particular territory. He has this philosophical view of the mountain, this relationship of the humans and nature. And what touches me from his message is this questioning. He's asking himself, what will happen if the sea of ice disappears, if other glaciers disappear? This will not only impact his economic activity, but this will affect this relationship between humans and nature. Regarding this aspect of adaptation, it's difficult to adapt. We're speaking about security and the continuity of their activities that could be threatened. I'm thinking about a refuge of the Cervine guides. Is located in the border between Italy and Switzerland. In 2018, it was no longer on the border. It had moved to Switzerland. Why? Because the glacier on which it was built melt. On the Italian side of Mont Blanc, on the Courmayeur area, 5,000 cubic meters of glaciers could melt.
Enfin, la disparition,
meaning a huge hazard. We know what are the impacts on water cycles. Jean-Baptiste already spoke about this. The disappearance of glacier has huge impacts on water resources. They constitute large amounts of fresh water on the planet. If we no longer have these sources, the valleys would be affected. And the disappearance of glaciers, of course, threaten several human activities. I'm thinking about agriculture, agro-industry, tourism.
En fait, ce sont des vallées qui vont être bouleversées par la disparition.
These are valleys that will be truly impacted by the disappearance of glacier. I will not go into details about the increase of seawater levels already described by Jean-Baptiste, but to finish this presentation, I'd like to say that the access to fresh water is a fundamental right recognized by the United Nations. And preserving our resources is key. Preserving glaciers.
Au-delà de, on a déjà parlé de.
It's also important. We have already we've spoken about the urgency of protecting glaciers.
A aussi un impact sur
And
nous.
We've spoken about the impact this has on our own lives. We like saying that if we need the mountain, then mountains also need us. So it is urgent to change our individual collective practices, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and preserving natural spaces, changing our approaches to these environments.
Thank you, Fiona Mill, and thank you also for sharing Jan Bonnier's testimony with us. I have no further questions. Does the judge have any questions for Fiona Mill, please?
Yes, I have just a very quick one.
The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup pour votre témoignage et celui de Yann.
Thank you so much for your testimonial and for Jan's stories. Very inspiring. We've understood your linkage, your approach to mountains, to high mountain environments. I'd like to know a little more. You've spoken about human communities that live in harmony with high mountain, that depend on this for their imaginary yes, and the risks that melting of glaciers could have on human life. But we have not spoken about non-human. Could you please explain what are the communities, the non-human communities that depend on glaciers to exist? And what are the linkages of interdependence, of interconnection? That would be very important to know. Yes, sure. We've discussed with Jean-Baptiste talking about the immediate proximity to glaciers. I was thinking about animals, for example, because of course, down the direct proximity, we will not find smoke or plants. But this idea of non-living, for example, rock blocks, they're not alive, but they have the legitimacy to exist. So we could ask this question. We have different ecosystems that rely on the existence of the glaciers. We can think about rivers, aquatic systems. There we will find different species, different plants. And then we have the non-humans that exist thanks to the food they find, tasters, and the connection there exists. So it is important, well, to answer to your question, we must not limit ourselves to this vision, this limited vision of the Sea of Ice, but all the natural ecosystems that depend on it. Thank you. It was very important to make that precision.
Thank you. If there is no further questions at the moment, I will also give the possibility to Jean-Baptiste Posson to comment. Please.
Merci. C'était juste pour compléter la réponse de Fiona. Merci.
Thank you. I just wanted to complete Fiona's response. In fact, glaciers are a space of life. Here we find invertebrate. There are many research programs that are working to document living beings before the glacier disappears. There's little biodiversity, but this is an exception on rare biodiversity that is, of course, highly impacted by climate change. Glaciers contribute to redistribute water during the summer. If we see what are the influences of the glacier on the Rhone, for example, we see that it's very important in terms of volume of water, and here we have several species. In this regard, we know the contribution of water that glaciers have on rivers. When we have less water in summertime, our rivers are weaker, and this impacts many species.
Jean-Baptiste, Basson, I would like you to round off and finish.
Okay, I finished.
Thank you very much. I now ask the legal expert Pierre Spilvoy for his intervention. But before you go ahead, Pierre Spilvoy, I would like to know, why are you fit to speak for the rights of this glacier? Please, the floor is yours.
Merci, Madame la procureure. Je pense que la première raison, c'est...
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor. Well, the first reason is for me to intervene as a human being concerned by the melting of the glacier and the destruction of all elements of biodiversity, but also as a jurist in international law, environmental international law, and law, and I'm interested about the impact of human activities and the destruction of biodiversity. In my intervention, I will simply complete some juridical elements that have already been mentioned. Given that besides a national law that is rich in protection measures, just like Marine Izquierdo has demonstrated, France is registered in the international dynamics that look for a protection of glaciers. International law is pertinent here, since that the Sea of Ice is at the center of a massif where sovereignty is shared among different countries: Swiss, Liechtenstein, Austria, Slovenia, France, that also are part of the Alpine Massif. So we can imagine cooperation among these countries. Jean-Baptiste Basson has spoken about huge impacts that the melting of ice, the Sea of Ice, could have on the neighboring ecosystems, and this concerns France as well as neighboring countries. And also, there are also ecosystemic consequences and economic consequences, especially for the tourist sectors. It's very close to Italian border, and of course we can imagine huge economic impact for Italian tourist sector. We've been speaking about the protection of the Alpine Massif internationally. There's an association called Pro Mont Blanc. They've been claiming this for years, and actually in international law, we have a necessary instruments and tools to state this protection and speak about it today. We'll speak about this protection, and this will be the guideline of my presentation. We will be speaking about the protection of different ecosystems. There are protection mechanisms and also economic interest, exploitation, and value of use for health and food. Thus, the right of resources and the management of transport of resources is particularly interesting. The nature of the glacier is considered a solid source. We can well imagine that this applies to the trans-border management, these resources. We know this, we've known this for years in international law. There's a principle of water non-degradation by the state. In the international jurisprudence, there's a notion of a border zone. So sovereignty no longer plays, and we know that ecosystems are global. As a matter of fact, there's international say in jurisprudence that covers these rights and use of resources for navigation, for example. This was adopted the UN in 1997, and that water systems have physical relationship and unity and are normally a common point for states. So, of course, glaciers are part of these area of application. In a transporter application, there are different initiatives, cooperation between France and other countries for aquifer reserves, cooperation with Switzerland. And same thing occurs with the Sea of Ice. It's also important to talk about the access to different instruments in UNESCO Natural Heritage Framework that protect several glaciers. This protection will be difficult for the Mer de Glace, There's also a specific program des Nations Unies that protects some glaciers. Other instruments of protection have to do with a biological value. This is the case of the Ramsar Convention that considered humid areas and glaciers. In the European Union, we also have the protection of biological areas by Natura 2000. We could also think about a transporter cooperation between France and Italy for the Sea of Ice, or other cooperation between France and Germany. And finally, another instrument that is very important today for this case is an instrument of protection of ecosystemic value. And it has to do with a conference of a convention that will be taken this year. So biodiversity is recognized in this convention, this preamble, in the Declaration of Stockholm and Rio. In France, we also have the Environmental Charter. And France has mentioned this intrinsic value in different strategic documents. Linked to this, the convention is about the obligation of states for the conservation of biodiversity. France is committed to preserve 30% of its territory, 10% in strong protection. Marine has already mentioned this. the particular situation of the Sea of Ice benefits directly of strong protection in this framework. France also has strategies to reinforce regional cooperation programs. So we should encourage France to continue with the regional cooperation to implement transborder protection regarding Mer de Glace. There are different intercommunal initiatives in the Mont Blanc Massif avec the initiative Space Mont Blanc that gathers different communities from the Savoie, High Savoie, the Aoste Valley, and the Valais Canton. This is an initiative that looks to bring together knowledge and information about the glacier. I think this is key for the effective protection of these spaces. It's sharing all available knowledge about the glacier's traditional and scientific knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pierre Spielboy, for your presentation. And thank you for your advices. It is with great honor and responsibility that I today have taken the role as Prosecutor of the Earth, Prosecutor of this glacier, and this tribunal for the rights of nature. I will now summarize today's session and give the concluding remarks to the prosecution. We began this hearing reminded of the sacredness of water. Water is life and foundation for our existence. We have heard several voices raised on behalf of the glacier. Lawyers, experts, witnesses. I want to remind us all of the glacier's specialities and witnesses not present today. It is the complex communities consisting of microorganisms, including bacteria, archaea, algae, and fungi, as well as rotifers, tardigrades, annelids, insects, and crustaceans. The voice of all of this alpine flora and fauna, so-called glacial relics, that evolved to survive in conditions from the last glacial period and over the last 10,000 years alongside glaciers, have retreated to the mountain regions. The voice of the mountain hare and the rock ptarmigan, who are now losing their habitat at an alarming rate. The voice of the glacier buttercup, a flower that will have to climb 1,200 meters by the year 2100 in order to survive. They all depend on the glacier for their survival. It is for all of these creatures, all of these different forms and shapes of life, that we have gathered here today to serve justice. The web of life is more complex than we can ever map. The way life intersects makes it impossible to divide more than in our own imagination. The value of life can never be measured. We are one. La Mer de Glace, the Sea of Ice, is a unique glacier with its intrinsic value, as well as giving high values both for nature, wildlife, and humans. It is the largest glacier in France and the third largest in the Alps. Even though many different instruments exist to protect the glacier, we fail to implement them. The glacier lacks legal rights of its own, and the life of the glacier is threatened. Each year, the glacier shortens by 30 to 40 meters and loses 4 to 5 meters of its downstream thickness. Since 1850, the Mer de Glace has withdrawn by 2 kilometers. This is a violation of the glacier's right to exist, to endure and to regenerate its life cycle, which are rights enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Earth. But there is still hope to save la Mer de Glace, and it's of other importance to take strong actions to respect these rights. We also bear in mind that what is happening to la Mer de Glace is happening to other glaciers as well, and they are all indicators of living proofs of the ongoing climate crisis taking place on Earth. In only 23 years, 1994 to 2017, Earth has lost 28 billion tons of ice. This has a serious impact on all life. As the glaciers are shrinking, life as we know it is threatened and species are going extinct. Meanwhile, the French state continues to be passive. The company Total is releasing tons of CO2 emissions into our atmosphere. These perpetrators have not accepted the invitation to participate today on this tribunal. The French state carries a responsibility toward limiting global warming in general and toward protecting glaciers in particular, which can so far be characterized as weak level of action and an overall breach of international commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emission. The Total Group are responsible for 0.9% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, making Total one of the 20 companies contributing the most to climate change on a global scale. We find ourselves in several crises, all related to how we humans treat each other beings, organisms, and Earth herself. The voice of the Earth and all her creatures has not been heard, or we would not find ourselves here. It is time to listen, and I thereby ask the tribunal to recognize the responsibility of the French state and Total in the violation of the Sea of Ice rights, to enforce the compliance of the French state with the Paris Agreement and reducing at least by 45% emission of greenhouse gases by 2030. For the French state to take necessary measures to limit greenhouse gas emission and contain global warming, and to protect the Sea of Ice under strong protection. For Total to publish a new duty of care plan, which includes concrete measures which the company will have to implement in order to not only limit greenhouse gas emissions, but to store it by giving back to Mother Earth and restoring her ecosystems. I ask the tribunal to draft and implement efficient norms and legislation to defend, protect, preserve the rights of Mother Earth, and notably, for an oil company, that does not mean that fossil fuels can be replaced with biofuels. It means a complete transformation of their business model. I ask to promote and encourage practices that are respectful to the Sea of Ice, Mer de Glace, to promote economic system in harmony with Mother Earth and compatible with the rights recognized in the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth. I ask to recognize the glacier's right to exist, regenerate. We also protect the fundamental rights of human and non-human beings. There is an undeniable link of interdependence between humans and non-humans and glaciers. I ask to acknowledge that in order to guarantee the rights of human and non-human beings, we must recognize and uphold the rights of Mother Earth and the natural elements forming it, notably the Mer de Glace, and to that end, to recognize Mer de Glace quality as a legal subject. And I ask to uphold the Mer de Glace rights to exist, regenerate, and have natural cycles to respect, protect, preserve cycles, processes, vital ecological balance of the sea of ice, Mer de Glace. And I ask to appoint representatives to the Mer de Glace whom shall defend its interests and take part in any decision-making regarding, even remotely, the glacier. Thank you. I hereby gives the words to the President, Cormac Cullinan.
Thank you very much, Madam Prosecutor. I would like, on behalf of the Tribunal and the Court, I'd like to congratulate you on your extremely competent prosecution of this case, and to all who have given evidence before the Tribunal. We have heard an extremely thorough and comprehensive expression of the glacier, both scientific and in terms of the personal relationships that people have had with this being. And you have emphasized to us the importance of not only this glacier, but also glaciers globally. And in a sense, they are like mothers of the rivers that are life and an essential part of the hydrological cycles. And we've heard how this essential part of the hydrological cycle, which is also the cycle of life, is being damaged, and how something needs to be done about it. This case also gives particular challenges to the Tribunal. There are difficult questions to balance. For example, we are faced with major companies like Total, whose business models appear to be incompatible with the continued existence of glaciers. We are also called upon to look at what the right to exist means in relation to a glacier. And there are many other challenging issues which the judges will have to consider in arriving at a judgment. And as you know, the judgments of this tribunal are aimed not at retribution or revenge or punishment, but at restorative justice. So we seek to formulate judgments which restore the damaged relationships between humans and other beings such as glaciers. And that will be particularly challenging in this case because of, as we've heard, the existential threat to all glaciers. But I'll now give the floor to Judge Valerie Cabanes, who is the judge leading this particular hearing, this particular case. Thank you.
Honorable Chairman of the Tribunal, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to express my deep gratitude, first and foremost, to the witnesses of the Mer de Glace, Yann Bornier, High Mountain Guide. He has been able to convey to us his passion for the glacier and high mountain in general. Fiona Meal, representative of Association Mountain Wilderness, thank you for your testimony and about the concrete effects of the disappearance of the sea of ice. Thank you, Jean-Baptiste Pousson, glaciologist and geomorphologist. He has talked about the causes and terrible consequences of the melting of glaciers. I'd also like to thank Maureen Izquierdo for having defended the rights of the glaciers to maintain the dignified lives of these ecosystems and all ecosystems that depend on glaciers. Thank you also for the advice of Pierre, who has shared with us many important messages for the protection and different mechanisms. Thank you, Philippe Descola, for his testimonial, helping us understand how guardian people, the first people, have always and helped us understand how to live in harmony with other natural elements, with brothers and sisters, with the plants, animals, in nature. I'd also like to congratulate Rebecka Lemoine, prosecutor this case for sharing with the tribunal the terrible situation of the Mer de Glace, the terrible consequences induced, and to ask so that the main responsible can be named and asked to act. We've all worked on a common goal to defend life and encourage Mother Earth and communities that constitute it, and also to protect the life conditions on our planet. Unfortunately, the defendants have not attended this tribunal. Hopefully, this will allow us, the judges, to quickly establish a verdict. This verdict will aim to determine if the rights of the Mer de Glace and the life communities that rely on it, to define if they have been violated according to the rights announced in the Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Earth. They are part of interdependence links with other systems and ecological cycles. This will help us determine if Mother Earth has been threatened and damaged. Our verdict will determine what are the obligations of the French state and the company Total have failed to protect the rights of the Mer de Glace. Regarding the duties have before human beings and Mother Earth, but also talk about obligation and protection that these entities are fixed to. We could then establish what are the measures that must be taken to remediate, if possible, and assess the seriousness of these acts, and to understand if they can be considered ecocides or in risk of ecocides. I commit myself to support my opinion, and I'm available to visit the status and the situation of the Mer de Glace. I would like to conclude reminding the importance of this tribunal in 5 cases that we've chosen that are all linked to water. 5 cases that are key and that commit us to a very high obligation and engagement. As a matter of